U.S. stock futures rise after Friday's rally on Wall Street with S&P 500 and Nasdaq hitting record closing high. Trade deals hopes fueled investors' risk appetite, and economic data helped solidify expectations for rate cuts from the U.S. Federal Reserve. Asian markets track gains on Wall Street to start the week on a positive note. Japanese Nikkei leads the gains as investors assess and weight the slew of economic data from the region. GIFT Nifty is indicating a positive start for the Indian market. Oil prices slip on easing geopolitical risk in West Asia, and prospects of another OPEC Plus output hike in August boosted the supply outlook. U.S. President Donald Trump's Big Beautiful Bill clears key Senate hurdle. The sweeping tax cut and the spending bill was passed by a 51-49 vote, but question still remains about whether the package will ultimately pass the House ahead of the self-imposed July 4th deadline. Torrent Pharma is set to acquire KKR's 46.39% stake in JB Chemicals, followed by an open offer and merger strengthening the chronic segment and the CDMO footprint in India and abroad. The 25,689 crore deal is done at a discount to the current market price. Hello, good morning. You've tuned into CNBC TV18. You're watching Power Breakfast with me, Vinny Motiwala. How have the Asian markets opened this morning? A bit of a positive start is what we're seeing coming in for most of them, except for Hang Seng and Taiwan Index, which are on your screens. Both are down, almost more than 0.4% in today's trading session. But ASX 200, that's Australian index, Nikkei, the Japanese index, all of them managing to hold on to gains. Shanghai, some bit of a positive start coming in here as well. 0.1% of gain is what we're watching out for from the Shanghai index as of now. But Nifty implied open, that's indicating a bit of a mildly positive to muted start is what we could watch out for. Do not forget, last week we did see a good run-up coming in. So that is something that we'll keep an eye out on. But a mildly positive start is what we're watching out for in terms of the Indian markets. Today, as of now, Nifty implied open is up almost 18 points. But what did the US markets do on Friday? What we saw on Wall Street that ended higher across major indices on Friday. Dow added around 432 points. S&P 500 that closed at a record climbing of 32 points, and Nasdaq climbed 106 points. What more happened on Wall Street? We have CNBC's Pippa Stevens joining with us with a wrap on what's happening on Wall Street. I beg your pardon.
U.S. markets ended the day higher across the major indexes in Friday trading, with the S&P and Nasdaq closing at a record, even as President Trump abruptly ended trade talks with Canada. The Dow adding 432 points, the S&P climbing 32 points, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq rising 106 points. President Trump on Friday said the U.S. is immediately ending all trade talks with Canada. Trump's declaration comes as Canada moved forward with a digital services tax on American tech companies. In a post on Truth Social, the president accused Canada of copying the EU with the egregious tax. The levy is set to go into effect on Monday, and the 3% fee will apply retroactively to companies including Amazon, Google, and Meta. In response, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said he has yet to speak to President Trump and will continue to navigate the talks in Canada's best interests. And the core inflation rate was higher than expected in May, rising to 2.7% in May, in the Federal Reserve's preferred inflation gauge, the Personal Consumption Expenditures, or PCE. Americans pulled back on spending last month to the slowest since January of this year. The Commerce Department said consumers cut their spending the most at restaurants and hotels. That's what's happening here in the U.S. Back to you in Mumbai.
Thank you so much for that, Pippa. But let's move on and let's see what experts had to say about the inflation report that came in stronger than expected.
Came in sort of roughly around where people had expected it. I think both market expectations and Fed expectations. We're off by less than 0.1%. That really starts to get into kind of the rounding error. So it's broadly consistent with where the I think markets and Fed were. No sign of an impact of tariffs that could be coming, and obviously that's something that Jay Powell has talked a lot about. But I think it's consistent with a very gradual return to a 2% goal.
More in the Chris Waller camp, that if you look to the tariffs, they're on imports. Imports are 13% of U.S. GDP. It seems like there's going to be a lot of negotiation that'll avoid some of the high tariffs that people were concerned about. Secretary Lutnick was talking about that yesterday. And I think even if things aren't fully settled by the deadline next month, I think there'll continue to be negotiations that'll probably have that somewhat muted. People can also avoid the tariffs if they buy domestically produced goods or buy them from lower tariff places. So I don't see it as having, I think it will have a short-term impact, but I just don't see it as being a big impact that the Fed really has to substantially respond to.
The speculation about how much impact tariffs are going to have on inflation, and more importantly, probably than that, how long-lasting that impact will be, whether it will work its way into secondary price increases. There's a lot of uncertainty, obviously, around that. On the consumer side, we not only have the softer income numbers and the questions about whether or not there's going to be a reduction in consumer sentiment translating into reduced consumer activity. So you've got an unusual situation in which there are pressures on both sides of the mandate, but to this point, both sides of the mandate are performing reasonably well.
There is a lot stirring in the pot here. So you talked about core PCE coming in today, 2.7% year over year, but there are those on the Fed that really like a shorter term trend metric of that. The 3-month annualized rate of change in core PCE is below the Fed's goal. So or if you're a Governor Bowman, if you're a Governor Waller, and they're probably not the only ones on the Fed that would point to that and say, hey, what if we're wrong on tariffs coming through? Maybe companies are absorbing more of this. And yes, that means margins are going to be hit, and maybe that means more layoffs, but maybe it means the inflationary impact is just not what we think it's going to be. So I think the arguments toward cutting are going to grow on the FOMC, but I just don't think they're going to be able to get consensus by this July meeting.
That's what's happening in the US, but what happened in the European markets? Europe closed Friday's trading session with gains on signs of improving trade relations between the US and China. The French CAC added around 138 points. The DAX closed more than 380 points higher. The British FTSE also added more than 60 points at close. The stocks European 600 index provisionally closed higher by 1.1% as well. So a bit of a positive handover that's coming in from the European market as well. But that's all the global market action that we had for you all this morning. How is all this going to be impacting our Indian markets? What are we watching out for in terms of the trade setup, the stocks to watch out for? We have a team of research joining in with us. First up, Horvaz, good morning. And what are the important cues that we are watching out for this morning? Last week, surely we did see a good run-up coming in. Is that expected to continue?
Good morning, Winnie, and the Bulls will definitely be hoping that that continues because of the handover that is coming from Wall Street. It's a positive one, and the Nifty also on the back of a 4-day winning streak has had a positive start to the July series as well. Historically, the series has been a good one. So almost 700 points that the index has gained in the last 4 trading sessions. And that is, of course, when the index heavyweights are performing, the Nifty would move higher. Then HDFC Bank hit a record high last week. ICICI Bank is very close to a record high. Reliance Industries put its hand up last week, also 3.5% higher there. That stock too is nearing its record high levels. So index heavyweights contributing to the Nifty upside, and the HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank combo has led Nifty Bank too at towards record high levels as well. And the broader markets too, they were the outperformers last week, and they too are nearing record high levels. The mid cap index is around 2.5% away, small cap index around 4% away. So a few more good weeks and we might see these two indices too hitting record high levels as well. The focus now is back to domestic cues with all these geopolitical tensions easing. In just a couple of days from now, companies will start reporting their business updates. We have auto sales figures about expected this week. We also have the HDB financial listing taking place this week. And of course, in case a first draft of the India-US trade deal being signed before the 9th of July deadline will be an additional kicker for our own markets as well. Of course, the index now is around 650 points away from its record high levels. That 25,700 to 25,900 range can act as a bit of a barrier, so we need to keep an eye out on that one. Of course, the Nifty Bank being in blue sky territory, we need to keep an eye out on if there is any further upside here. Of course, the M&A activity continuing today, being the last day of the block window as well before the trading window shuts. And today we'll see shares worth almost 3,500 crores and become eligible for trade because of the shareholder lock-in ending. So there is a lot of factors to watch out for in today's session. And as of now, the GIFT Nifty is indicating a slightly positive start for our own markets as well.
Slightly positive start for our own markets. Thank you so much for that, Hurmaz. But over to Vamakshi, who's here to tell us which are the important stocks to watch out for in today's trading session. Good morning, Vamakshi.
Good morning, Vinny. Let me first start off with Torrent Pharma and JB Chemical. Both of these counters will be in focus after Torrent will be acquiring 46.4% stake in JB Chemicals for 11,917 crores at 1,600 rupees per share, which is coming in at a discount of almost 11% to the closing price on Friday. Torrent Pharma will also be making an open offer at 1,639 rupees per share for an additional 26% stake in the company. Now, Karnataka Bank is also on our radar. MD and CEO Sri Krishnan H.H. Sharma and Executive Director Shekhar Rao have tendered their resignation. Jyoti CNC also on our radar. Sources suggest that certain non-promoter shareholders are likely to sell 6% stake in the company via block deals, and the deal size is 1,542 crores, which also includes an option to upsize of almost 304 crores. Prestige Estates has signed an agreement with Arihant Group. They will be jointly developing 3.5 acres of land parcel to develop a residential project with a GDV of 1,600 crores. As far as order wins are concerned, we'll be keeping an eye out on BHEL. They've received a 6,500 crore order from Adani Power. Titagarh Rail has received an order from Maharashtra Metro Rail Corporation. They will be supplying 12 additional train sets for the Pune Metro project with an order value of 431 crores. ITD Cementation also on our radar. They've secured an international marine contract worth 580 crores, and Hind Rectifiers has secured 2 orders from Indian Railways worth 228 crores. Telecom data for the month of May was also out. Reliance Jio added 27 lakh users. Bharti Airtel added 2.76 lakh users, while Vodafone Idea lost 2.74 lakh users. And lastly, keep an eye out on Alembic Pharma. They've received the US FDA approval for doxorubicin hydrochloride injection.
Okay, Vamakshi, thank you so much for that. But finally, we also have Mangalam, who's waiting by to tell us what are we watching out for in the world of F&O. Good morning, Mangalam.
Good morning. So we started the July series with a fair amount of a bang. In fact, we ended the June series with a bang as well. And that good news is likely to continue. That's exactly what the GIFT Nifty is indicating, because overnight we also got good cues coming in from Wall Street. So 15 points positive on the GIFT Nifty. No problems when it comes to flows as well. The FI has bought about 1,400 crores in the cash markets. The DI has sold about 600 crores. In index futures as well. Remember, FII started the July series with 38% long exposure, and that has maintained. They bought about an incremental 300 crores in index futures. What was, however, positive and more stock specific is the FI has bought 900 crores in stock futures. In fact, they added around 14,600 long contracts, covered about 16,000 short contracts, and that is where the play is likely to be. With the index doing what the index is doing, all eyes will be on the mid and small cap indices, which will see an up move more likely, because now there is certainty around the frontline index as well. As far as the frontline index is concerned, because we've seen a rally already, congestion around the 25,800 to 25,900 cannot be ruled out, because we're seeing call writing at 25,700 and 25,600. But at the same time, support has moved higher as well. So look at the 25,600 put. That has a premium of around 100 rupees. And the 25,500 put, that too has a premium of around 80 rupees. What does all of this options action mean for the frontline index? Well, there is support near 25,450 to 25,500. That's what the option writers are expecting. And some supply around 25,750 to 25,800. Why do I say that there is some supply? Because one, there are chances that the India VIX is pricing in complacency. It's at just 12.4, and the Nifty put call ratio has come in at 1.25, which implies that it's at the higher end of the range of 1.2 to 1.3. So those are a couple of factors that may tell you that maybe in the very near term we see some bit of consolidation, but the long term, no problem. Buying on dips is a better strategy. The one stock I'll be watching out for today, Torrent Pharma. A lot has been spoken about the deal with JB Chemicals, but remember on Friday itself, the stock had shown some signs of a deal coming in, because there were a lot of long positions being added and the stock ended about 4% higher. So keep an eye out on that one.
Okay, absolutely, Mangalam. We'll surely keep an eye out on that. But on that note, we're going to actually sip into a very short break. When we get back, we'll get you more details on the Torrent Pharma and JB Chemical deal. So stay tuned in for that. Welcome back and thanks for staying tuned into Power Breakfast on CNBC TV18. Now let's talk about Torrent Pharma because that is set to acquire KKR's 46.39% stake in JB Chemicals, followed by an open offer and merger. Ekta is joining in with us to give us more details on this deal. Ekta, the much-awaited deal I think we're watching out for. Finally, that's coming.
Hi, thanks for that. Yes, absolutely. Torrent, remember, at one point in time was looking to acquire Cipla and has a very good track record when it comes to domestic M&A. So finally, they've got JB Chemicals in their kitty, which has very strong domestic brands. But nonetheless, on the deal itself, it's a two-phase deal. So the total purchase price is going to be around 19,480 crores or up to that amount for around 46.39% stake. The equity valuation comes to around 25,689 crores, and that is a discount to the current market cap of JB Chemicals. So phase one, they're going to acquire 46.39% stake from KKR for 11,917 crores. They may acquire 2.8% stake from the employees at around up to 1,600 rupees per share, and the open offer will be around 26% at around 1,639.18 rupees. The second phase is a merger. JB Chemical shareholders will receive 51 shares of Torrent shares for every 100 shares of JB Chemicals. Now, in terms of the valuation and funding, the deal is at around an 11% discount to JB Chemicals' current market price. The open offer is around an 8.9% discount. It is likely to be debt funded for Torrent Pharma. But remember that they also approved 5,000 crores in terms of fundraise in May 2024. The valuation 19 to 20 times FY27 EV to EBITDA, which is close or is a discount to the Torrent valuation currently, which is at around 23 times EV to EBITDA on an FY27 basis. What it does do is that it strengthens Torrent's domestic portfolio. Torrent will become the fifth largest pharma company in India. Domestic sales for the company will rise 35% to around 8,600 odd crores, and they'll gain key chronic brands such as Silicar, which is a cardio brand, 785 crores in terms of sales. Metrogel, which is a gastric brand, around 342 crores. Rantac as well from the gastro space. They will also enter the CDMO lozenges space, and JB Chemicals will then become one of the top 5 global players within that segment. Remember, they have a past record in terms of M&A, so that should probably aid Torrent, and that'll probably give the street comfort for this big, large acquisition that they've made.
Absolutely. Ekta, thank you so much for that. So these are important details coming in for the Torrent and JB Pharma deal. But now getting you the latest update on Trump-related developments, we have Dia joining with us in a special segment, Trump Watch. Good morning, Dia.
Starting off with a significant statement, U.S. President Donald Trump said Iran might get sanctions relief if they can be peaceful following last week's U.S. airstrikes aimed at crippling Iran's nuclear program. But Iran remains deeply skeptical. Officials in Tehran said they doubt the U.S. brokered ceasefire with Israel will hold and issued a warning that any fresh aggression will be met with a response. Now, back in Washington, the president addressed another looming deadline. Trump said he is unlikely to extend the July 9 trade deadline set for countries to reach new deals with the U.S. to avoid higher tariffs.
Is that July 9th date a set for tariffs to snap back, or could there be a...
We can do whatever we want. We could extend it. We could make it shorter. I'd like to make it shorter. I'd like to just send letters out to everybody. Congratulations, you're paying 25%.
U.S. senators were inching Sunday towards a vote on President Trump's big, beautiful spending bill, a hugely divisive proposal that would deliver key parts of the president's domestic agenda while making massive cuts to social welfare programs. The Senate version would add nearly $3.3 trillion to U.S. deficits over a decade, according to a new estimate from the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. Meanwhile, a war of words is brewing yet again over the tax plan. Billionaire Elon Musk took to social media platform X to slam the Senate's version of Trump's multi-trillion-dollar tax bill. Musk warned that cuts to EV and clean energy credits were incredibly destructive, adding that the bill would destroy millions of jobs and reward industries of the past while damaging the future of clean tech. And lastly, Trump has announced there's a potential buyer for the U.S. operations of TikTok. The sharing app owned by China's ByteDance, but he isn't naming names just yet, saying the details will be revealed in about 2 weeks. That's all for today. Now back to you.
Okay, Diya, thank you so much for that. Important updates coming in on the Trump front and what has happened in terms of developments there. On that note, we're going to actually slip into a very short break. When we come back, we get you the cues in the world of commodities. So stay tuned in for that. Welcome back and thanks for staying tuned into Power Breakfast on CNBC TV18. Now we have Manisha Gupta joining in with us to tell us what's happening in the world of commodities. What are we keeping an eye out on this morning? Good morning.
Morning, Vinny. Thank you for that. Well, we're looking at some profit taking continuing in case of the gold prices. Trading just at $32.75 an ounce. It's a 1-month lows for the gold prices. Well, abating West Asia tensions, Iran-Israel ceasefire clearly has been taking off some of that safe haven bank that we saw in case of gold. Also, the progress in trade negotiations with China and India, also conversations very positive and progressing with Mexico, Vietnam and Japan, as we hear from US, also has led to some profit-taking continuing in case of gold. Decline is also what we are working with in case of the crude oil prices. Last week was a 13% of a decline, and we've started Asia with a 1% cut at this point in time. Israel-Iran ceasefire holding clearly has been one of the factors that is putting pressure on prices. The other is that OPEC and allies are expected to boost production for crude by another 411,000 barrels in the month of August. So more supplies coming in from OPEC also seems to be weighing on prices.
Okay, Manisha, thank you so much for that. Surely we'll be keeping an eye out on gold as well as crude. But let's move on to updates coming in from Russia and Ukraine war. A Ukrainian F-16 fighter pilot was killed while repelling a Russian attack. Now, this comes as Moscow intensifies overnight air fires and air barrages in the 4th year of the war. Take a look at this report.
A Ukrainian F-16 fighter pilot was killed while repelling a Russian attack overnight that involved hundreds of drones, cruise and ballistic missiles, Ukrainian authorities said on Sunday. In Kyiv, families huddled in metro stations for shelter after air raid sirens rang out. Machine gun fire and explosions were heard across the capital and in the western city of Lviv, where such attacks are less common. Russia has intensified nighttime air barrages in recent weeks, causing widespread damage and killing many civilians. The Ukrainian Air Force said the pilot did everything he could and flew the jet away from a settlement but did not have time to eject. Kyiv has not revealed how many F-16s it operates, but they have become a central and heavily used part of Ukraine's air defences. It has now lost 3 since it began operating the US-made jets last year. President Volodymyr Zelensky called for more support from Western allies to bolster Ukraine's air defences after the attack. Under President Donald Trump, Washington has not committed to new military aid for Ukraine. Trump said he was considering a Ukrainian request for more Patriot missile batteries after he met Zelensky at a NATO summit last Wednesday.
And in some somber news coming in, 3 people have died and 50 others were left injured in a stampede during the Rath Yatra in Odisha, Puri. The incident occurred about 3 kilometers from the Jagannath temple where the Yatra began. Around 4:30 a.m. yesterday, the holy chariots were at Gundicha temple and a large crowd had gathered for darshan. As the crowd swelled, some people fell and a stampede began. 3 people died on the spot. Hours after the incident, both the collector and Puri police chief were replaced, and the state government has announced compensation of 25 lakh rupees for the families of the victims. And with that, we're absolutely out of time on this edition of Power Breakfast on CNBC TV18. Nifty implied indicating a muted to slight bit of a positive start for the Indian markets. But don't go anywhere. You have Bazaar Morning Call up next to take you to all the market action.